Thanks for all of you being here. In January, when I was sworn in, there were 5 major objectives that I wanted to accomplish, and clearly pension reform was at the top. And as I went through all of the town hall meetings on the budget, I indicated to the public that we needed to fix our financial house in the city. And at the beginning of this conversation, when Warren Hellman and Sean Elsbernd and I and others started meeting, we had choices to make right at the beginning. And those choices included whether or not we were going to hold up for months finger blaming of what occurred and whose fault it was, or whether we would get to work and let the numbers tell us what we needed to do. That's precisely what we set out to do, and allowed those numbers, the numbers that we've been quoting in so many meetings throughout the city, as being the numbers that we had to attack. The financial house of the city would be challenged very severely if we did not allow ourselves to focus as we've done. And I want to thank all of the people that are standing beside me, as well as ones in the back of me, for having spent quality time in coming up with a consensus, comprehensive plan that we believe will fix this problem for the long term. I'm happy to announce that we have at least 8 sponsors, if not more, to present this pension proposal to the board, going through its Rules Committee and eventually to the full board for a vote, and then on to November for the ballot. Having said that, I want to emphasize that this proposal is comprehensive, that it looks at not only the numbers that had been talked about with all of the press, with all of you, but it also looks at the programs that we've had in place, pension spikes, COLAs, all the other things that had been contributing to a program that we were going to not be able to afford in coming years. We've been able to rein that in, but also do it in a fashion in which it provides a dignified pension to those that have contributed many, many of their years to this wonderful city. And I'm proud to say that in working on this, we also had a choice whether or not we would do it as a government or do it as a collaboration of people who were concerned about working families in the city and making sure that we talked to everybody and allowed every voice to be heard. Well, we spent that very considerable time starting in January up to now. The 4.5, almost 5 months of concerted effort reflect a comprehensive approach. It reflects a dialogue that's been transparent. It reflects business leaders, labor leaders, government officials, actuarians, the private sector, as well as the nonprofit sector, all contributing to their viewpoints about how the city can work together and make sure that we had a solvent pension system before us. We are looking at the system not just for the short term, but for the long term, and we have a proposal that we believe will save the city between $800 to $1 billion in the next 10 years, and allowing our pension system to be solvent during those years and longer into the future. As you know, reforming pension alone will not ensure that our city will be fiscally sound. I've also been working hard to balance the budget, and we'll be announcing those measures next week as we submit that proposal to the Board of Supervisors. But you will also see a different approach in that. We've committed ourselves to doing 5-year budgeting and 5-year financial planning and 2-year budget cycles as well. That has also been very helpful to understanding how our pension system works and how that is part of the whole fiscal soundness of the city. But it's been painfully evident that not just in San Francisco, but literally every city across this country has been facing the pension system and making sure that that challenge is confronted. But different cities have different approaches. And we've always felt that San Francisco would have a special approach that we ultimately will call the San Francisco approach. That is a consensus building, bringing everybody under the tent to talk through what these numbers mean and what we can do to contribute. And I want to thank all of the, all of the people who stand beside me, as well as those that have initially signed on that include all the supervisors that are here today. This proposal ties back into investing in our neighborhoods and in our communities. And as I've said many, many times, with a solvent city, we're able then to make city services increase and be maintained, as well as proper investments to keep families in our city. It is what I want to reemphasize, a consensus proposal that involves our city leaders, labor, business, and community and nonprofits. It's a comprehensive proposal that reflects a belief that all of us, no matter what level of work that you have in the city, will contribute to the solution. We're seeking long-term reform in this proposal in the form of new and lower benefits for those that we have yet to hire, and immediate relief in the form of cost sharing with current employees for the existing level of benefits that we provide. It's important that we show in this consensus plan that its comprehensiveness will be reflected in its ability to prevent pension spiking. It caps pension benefits. It raises the retirement age. It requires existing and new employees to share in pension and health care costs. And it uses a sliding scale to protect lower wage earners of our employee group. And it does probably the most important thing that other pension plans that you've been reading about do not do. It requires a greater contribution to the retiree health trust fund. I know that you will have questions about the so-called other plan. And I will say to you that other plans that maybe have been developed under closed doors and with smaller numbers of people have not had the transparency that this process has had, nor has it been reviewed literally with all the different actuarial reviews, including Mr. Hellman, his actuarials in the private sector, as well as our actuaries in the controller's office, as well as those that we've hired, and certainly have passed the muster with our city attorney's office. And we've included amongst that representatives of the labor unions, moderates and progressives, the downtown business representatives, as well as members of the Board of Supervisors. And here I'd like to recognize the tremendous effort that Supervisor Elsbernd has given to this process from day one. And I know from the very first day that we met and talked about this that there was a healthy level of cynicism that was displayed, one that was probably rested with a lot of things that hadn't gone proper for many, many years, a really keen look at what our retirement system wasn't doing. And I know that as the meetings continued and as labor representatives brought up with Warren Hellman and others in the tent of discussion, that we got better and better at, again, allowing the numbers to speak to us. Again, when you take into account the health contributions plus the pension contributions, we have a serious, comprehensive plan, and one that is reflecting the consensus. That's most important to us in San Francisco, is that we don't leave people behind. We get that voice done, and we include everyone's voice in it, and we have done that. Our plan is fair, it's responsible, it protects city services, and it ensures ultimately that our workers can retire in dignity and continue access to health care plans that across this rest of this country are exceedingly less affordable. With that, I'd like to welcome to this stand or to this podium someone that we've been working very closely with, be first of our speakers, and that's Warren Hellman. Come on up, Warren.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. They did make me promise not to play the banjo, so that won't happen. But this is truly an historic day for San Francisco, and I think for all of us who've worked on it. To think that this is, the mayor touched on this point, but this is a huge nationwide problem. It's being solved, or it's being approached in various ways: adversarial, dictatorial, some cooperation, but it really is a feather in the cap of San Francisco that we've been able to come together, and I don't want to belabor the point because it's been made, but we've been able to take the lead nationally in a plan that includes and has been majorly contributed to by the unions of our city, by the administration, and by a number of other sources. And I think there'll be real surprise nationally when they see San Francisco taking the lead with a consensual plan. So I'm thrilled. I'm really happy to be part of it. I keep thinking that I belong to some Native American tribe, and the chief is called Hootathunkit. But thank all of you for what you've done. I've been thrilled to be part of this. Thank you.
That healthy cynic on the Board of Supervisors, Sean Elsbernd. Supervisor Elsbernd.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let me start by thanking you for your steady hand of leadership throughout this process as we discuss things with you. The mayor was always right there behind all the numbers in every nuance and really throughout the process. You guided us, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. I'd like to thank Mr. Hellman. We first discussed this 2-3 days after Election Day last November, and here we are. And admittedly, I can attest, yes, I was a cynic. Wasn't quite sure this process would deliver. It absolutely has. This is real reform. This is a real proposal that every single San Franciscan can be proud to support come November. And I think it's also important to note, as much as we say real reform, as much as we say $800 million to $1 billion over the next 10 years, that's also real sacrifice. That's real dollars from our public employees. This isn't just a proposal about new employees. This is our current employees stepping forward and making real sacrifices. Individual city employee families will be sharing that burden, and that's something that needs to be recognized and shown tremendous gratitude. And I fully expect that the voters in November will show that gratitude, and I know the members of the board who are here appreciate that, and everybody who's been a part of this process does. So thank you to the mayor, thank you to Mr. Hellman, and thank you to all the representatives of the public employees who are here for stepping forward in the manner that they have.
Part of this effort has been a newfound relationship between the mayor's office and the Board of Supervisors. And we can't do it without leadership from both sides, lowering everything from egos to past blame and getting to the work of the city. And I want to thank President David Chu for helping to lead that on the board with all the rest of the board. And as you know, each time I met with individual members of the board, the whole idea of pension and where we're at on that was always an update. And I want to thank the Board of Supervisors, all of them and each of them, for their contributions to ideas to keep things moving forward and their positive attitude towards a very, very complex and comprehensive challenge that we had. Supervisor and Board President David Chu.
Good morning. Today is a great day to be a San Franciscan. This is a day that we show that we are not Washington, D.C., gridlocked for decades, drowning in national debt. This is a day that we show that we're not Sacramento, gridlocked for decades, drowning in long-term liabilities. This is a day that we show that we're not Wisconsin and trying to blame things on our workers. I want to thank everyone in the San Francisco family for coming together. Mayor Lee, thank you and your staff for prioritizing this and putting this at the very top of what we need to get done in 2011. Warren Hellman, I'm going to be sorry to not participate anymore with the Hellman group meetings that we've had. I obviously want to thank all of our brothers and sisters from labor, because not only have they been at the table for months working on this with us together, but our employees are going to be giving up thousands of dollars every year per person. And I don't think we can forget that. We have to really thank over and over again our workers for stepping up and being part of the table. And I, of course, not only want to thank our colleagues who are all here coming together, but I want to thank Supervisor Elsbernd, who has made this his passion. His expertise, I know, has educated all of us over the years to bring us together. So on behalf of the Board of Supervisors, we look forward to moving this through the board process. We look forward to making sure that San Francisco is with us and making sure that our fiscal health for years to come will ensure the health and safety of our residents. Thank you very much.
We had to be guided by a level of expertise in everything that we did. And I know the hardest working entity that helped all of the groups come together and recognize what we had to do has been our Department of Human Resources. And Mickey Callahan and Martin Grand, kudos to you for all of the expertise, the insights, the guidance that you've had, what works and doesn't work, what can be negotiated, what had to be left on the side for future consideration, what could be done immediately. All of those things were guided by very, very strong expertise in the city. And I want to personally thank Mickey and Martin for just sacrificing so much personal time in working with our groups, because we needed that guidance. We have a lot of issues. This is a very complicated issue, and to have the expertise there at the helm, Mickey, you have done a wonderful job. Come on up, Mickey. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate it. And I'm not going to repeat all the things except to acknowledge our wonderful staff at DHR. Stick your hands in the air as well. Thank you. Who themselves will be also contributing in the cost sharing. And of course, it's been wonderful once again being able to come together with labor in the city, like in the way that we do it so specially in San Francisco. I get to do what some people might think is the more boring part, which is to actually talk about what we did. But I'll be available after to ask questions if I don't go sufficiently into the level of granular detail that you'd like. As the mayor mentioned, cornerstone of this program is the cost sharing by active employees. That is what gives us immediate relief starting in approximately a year from now in fiscal year 12-13. And the amount of cost sharing will depend on the amount of the health of the pension fund, because we have certain contribution rates, and based on the employees' level of earnings, the employees will assist the city in by picking up a portion of the employer contribution. It will in fact become the employee's contribution. We can't predict for sure what our pension rates will be next year, but we anticipate that we certainly know that they'll be going up and that the employees will be a part of that solution. That is where the bulk of the savings that Mayor Lee mentioned come from, and Supervisor Elsbernd mentioned come from. That $800 to $1 billion over the next 10 years isn't cost sharing. It's important to note that we have, I think, diverged from some of the other models that you may have seen in that in our model, employees will also benefit when the rates do drop. We hope that they will drop sooner rather than later, and that what we're doing is moving to a shared risk model, shared risk, shared benefit. So when it becomes difficult, and yes, that is the case for the next few years, employees are a part of the solution. They will also benefit, as the city does, when the rates ultimately are reduced, as they will. We hope sooner rather than later. In addition to the cost sharing, and let me also mention, the cost sharing follows a model which, number one, it excludes the people who earn less than $50,000 a year. They will stay at their current pension contributions. And then there's a graduated formula based on income, with the highest rates paid by our safety employees, reflecting the fact that they do have a more expensive pension plan. Our plan also includes employees who are not in the San Francisco Employees Retirement System. We have approximately 1,000 city employees who are in the California Public Employees Retirement System. And they will be participating either by a negotiated cost-sharing method, or by moving into this FERS plan, or by another method that we'll negotiate. But the savings are guaranteed in the charter amendment, and the details we have some months to work out because they're extraordinarily complex. But we're happy that our brothers and sister employees in PERS will be joining us in the program. We have new retirement tiers. We are both raising for miscellaneous employees, we're raising the minimum age at which one is eligible for retirement. We're also raising the age at which the maximum retirement formula is available to 65. This will encourage employees to stay longer, which not only reduces our pension costs, but will reduce our costs for retiree health care. Because when people retire, we pay for their health care, and we also pay for the health care of those who replace them. So it's kind of a 2-for-1 on that regard. Similarly, for our public safety, the maximum retirement formula is achieved at age 58 for these new hires instead of the current age 55, and with a lower formula at the bottom of the scale, a 2.2% formula at age 50. We have a pensionable salary cap, which is 75 to 85% of the IRS rate. I can really go into great detail. Very complex, but it is something new for the city, and we're very pleased that we're able to negotiate it. We are moving to a 3-year final compensation period for new hires, so that the final pension the final pension will be calculated for new hires based on their 3 highest years, not their final 1 year, as is the case for most current actives, or final 2 years, which is the case for a few people hired since Prop D of last year. We are eliminating what's been known as the vesting retirement, also known as an annuity program for new hires. Instead, we will have a deferred service retirement option, which is approximately half the cost. So we're very pleased about that improvement as well. Supplemental COLAs, which are paid when the fund has earnings in excess, when the fund has earnings in excess of those that were predicted, will now be paid only when the fund is healthy enough to pay them. So the fund will have to be fully funded in order to pay those supplemental COLAs. So that good news will continue to be shared in the form of payouts, but only when the fund can support it. We are also, our elected officials will be joining us in both the cost sharing and in paying their own retirement contributions as well. And I'm sure they're happy about that. I was suggesting to them they shouldn't be so fast to give up their raises. The Health Service Board has been a very contentious issue because the city has wanted to move to the model that was in existence in 2004 and before, which had a 4 and 3 split. 4, I would call city appointees, 3 beneficiaries or members of the fund. And after much struggle, we've come up with a new model which we think will provide an exact balance. The members of the Health Service Board will be made up of 3 beneficiaries, members of the trust, 3 city appointees, and they will choose a tiebreaker, if you will, who will be nominated by the controller. So we're very happy at that compromise solution. And that's important, we think, because as a part of a very large part of our increase in costs is our health costs, and a lot of that has to do with what are the plans that we select and the decisions that we make in terms of our health coverage. We are also, as Mayor Lee mentioned, we're among the very few places that is requiring. Already we require people who are hired since January of 2009 to contribute to the Retiree Healthcare Trust Fund. It's an unfunded liability. Unlike pension, most public agencies have not funded their retiree health care, have not set aside money to pay for the health care they have promised to their retirees. So we started with new hires in 2009, and now active employees starting in 2016 will begin contributing in a ramp-up, maxing out at 1% with a matched contribution by the city. And it should be noted also that this is only a minimum. The city can negotiate higher contributions and will likely make such proposals as I believe people expect. There are certain health benefits, retiree health benefits, that were improved after people left city service, and the city will be making, and the amendment makes changes to ensure that any windfalls or benefit improvements that came after someone was no longer in city service will not be in effect. The benefit improvements will be strict. Those who have not yet retired but have left city service will not receive benefits that were not in effect when they left. And that's pretty much my summary. I would like to, again, thank everyone for working on it and thank all the people with calculators who helped. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mickey. Thank you. Very comprehensive. So as I said earlier, we began by people perhaps asking a question of why should we actually sacrifice? What do we got in it for ourselves? And that great leap, I think, started very early to what can we do to help make sure that our pension is solvent. And that has been really the changing role that labor has made. And I was pretty excited from the very beginning where we were making a lot of proposals. But when we started having union representatives make their proposals, then we knew that we were on our road to ultimately thinking together how we could solve this problem. And again, I want to attribute really where the crux of this matter lies, and that's with our labor unions and labor representatives working together with us to build that consensus and understanding so that we all sacrifice to make our system work better. And with that, I'd like to introduce Rebecca Ryan from our Municipal Executives Association. Rebecca.
Thank you so much. I want to acknowledge my colleagues standing beside me and behind me. I think it's important to understand what a difficult process consensus is. It's always preferable, but then what it requires is a balancing of many different interests. And people stayed in the room when things got difficult. People continued the hard work. We didn't allow ourselves to get sidetracked or splintered. I think there's a myth out there about public employees, and what I'm here to say is that public employees are the solution in San Francisco. They always step forward. They, after the election in November, where they said to the voters, if there's a problem, we'll figure it out and we will not shy away from it. They came together and based upon the facts, looked for an equitable and fair solution. And, I think the message is that the public employees stepped forward and they did the right thing in the right way. And that's what this measure represents. Nobody should be celebrating. These are real human beings that have to make real sacrifices, but we understand why. And believe me, nobody has a bigger interest in the financial health of the city and the programs and services it provides than the workers who provide them. So thank you for the opportunity to do the right thing, and I hope that the message that is shared from this is that the workers in San Francisco did do the right thing. Thank you.
I also noticed that from the San Francisco Labor Council, we began by a lot of the union reps saying, please just talk to us. And then after a few months, it's, okay, now let's talk with us. And that was a qualitative change in coming up with solutions. Tim Paulson from our Labor Council.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you said previously, this is really historic. I speak to my colleagues all over the country, whether or not it's from as close as San Jose to my colleagues out in New York, and there has never been a partnership with the city family that we have seen like we have in San Francisco. Usually people are doing it unilaterally, or somebody has their own good idea, and that ultimately lends to all kinds of friction. And here in San Francisco, we really, as everybody has said, have done it in a good way. Where do we get business, labor, progressives, and moderates all working together to come up with a solution to save jobs and city services? Here, San Francisco, we've set a new path to what's moving on. Besides all, and by the way, this has also been done with the account of what the impact is on working men and women here in town. This was done deliberately, this was done very, very, very smartly, and there was long meetings that took place during which we crafted this proposal. I in particular want to thank Warren Hellman for stepping up and to helping us also lead this charge. And besides all of the public sector unions, and I mean this, all the public sector unions, the building trades, the people in the Department of Public Health, the lawyers, the public safety, everybody was at the table as they moved forward. And I want to give an extra shout out to the chair of our Public Employees Committee, Bob Muscat from Local 21. I'm surprised that his marriage is still together, the amount of hours and the times that he's put together. And I also want to acknowledge, besides everybody that is surrounding us today, some of the other people that were working even on extra hours. Rebecca Rhyme, I know Tommy O'Connor from the firefighters, Gary Delanis from the police, and SEIU representatives, along with the Board of Supervisors, sat down and really did a lot of number crunching so that people were fully prepared when they moved to the table. So this is really historic, and I'm really proud, both in the public sector and our private sector unions, that we can craft this type of a solution. Thank you.
I also said the transparency was well beyond just the labor unions as well as our city workers, but we also had business at the table as well. So I know that this transparency was reflected in the San Francisco Chamber of Commerce and their ongoing participation and listening very carefully to our efforts here. Steve Falk from the Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you, Mayor Lee. The Chamber of Commerce and the entire business community of San Francisco certainly wants to thank you for your leadership, Supervisor Elsbernd for your leadership, Warren Hellman for your leadership. These are painful, difficult times. Private sector businesses in this city have felt the pain for many years. Businesses have adjusted their pension plans. Businesses have had to reduce their workforces. We now have 40,000 unemployed San Franciscans. So it was time that we faced the reality of helping the city adjust the needed pension reform. So we were pleased to be part of this process. Again, the best kind of reform is consensus reform. There aren't many times when you see in front of you city leaders, labor leaders, business leaders agreeing that this is the right solution at the right time. Thank you, Mayor, again for your leadership, and we look forward to balancing the city's budget and getting our economy back on track. Thank you.
By the way, if you're keeping count, I counted 9 supervisors that were here, and the other 2 I think is simply because they couldn't make it on time. But I do want to reemphasize this is a whole city family's approach. We had also working with us Gabe Metcalf from SPUR. I know he's here. We had from the nonprofit arena Stephen Fields from Progress Foundation and Sherilyn Adams from the Larkin Street Youth program. They were there at all of the meetings. And then I want to emphasize what Tim Paulson did was the working group Stand Up for Working Families that included Bob Muscat, Eileen Hurst, Gary Delanis, Larry Mazzola from our Plumbers, Rebecca Ryan, of course, Roxanne Sanchez from our SEIU, Sean Connolly from our Municipal Attorneys Association, Tom O'Connor from the Fire, of course, Tim Paulson, and then here today as well we're joined by Fire Chief Joanne Hayes-White. And I also want to make sure I recognize that throughout this whole process, our city attorney contributed greatly to all of the legal questions that came up and has blessed our approach, and knowing that how difficult these aspects were, they've stepped up to help us review all of these proposals. With that, this press conference is concluded, and we move forward. Yes, we will take questions.
To conclude without question.
It's done, right?
A couple things. First of all, the city now pays 14%, as I understand it, of salaries. In this proposal, we're talking about 35%. How can you afford that? Doesn't that take a while to kick in?
Well, it does, but obviously we have a long-term view on this, and as I said earlier, our calculations indicate $800 to $1 billion in savings in the next 10 years, and so a lot of it will depend upon how the economy is and how our investments do. That number will change accordingly, but we've got a very comprehensive package, so it isn't just what the current employees will contribute, although we've always said that was going to be the major part, and that's where a lot of the current sacrifices are reflected.
35%, is that what you said? It never gets to 35%. We hope it does, I should say. There's
Where did that number come from, 35?
Good question.
It's a safety net. I mean, we've made the calculations just in case.
So how much savings are you going to have at the beginning, and can you talk to the whole idea of smoothing?
Well, the very first year this takes effect, we anticipate an immediate $60 million in year 12-13. In addition to that, all the new hires will start contributing in a different way beginning as of January of next year. So that's the immediate savings. There is no smoothing in this process because there wasn't any smoothing in the economics of what we're faced with. And so we did not consider that at all.
That's a 10-year plan, and it doesn't really get going for a couple of years. What about right now? And aren't we in serious rates? And is that going to solve anything immediately?
Again, no, we took a long-term approach. We do have labor contracts that are in place right now that that we have to still honor, and we currently obviously have a lot of obligations that we have to honor with current retirees. So we could not touch that by legal obligation. So we had to start making the significant changes as of next fiscal year.
And where are the service employees?
The service employees are right here. They're right here among us. SEIU is represented here in this group as well.
My understanding is that SEIU 1021 had some objections initially to the mayor's plan. Are you able to speak a little bit about how you all came on board?
I would just say that we're happy to be here today. We are Patty Tamora, the staff director in San Francisco for Service Employees International Union. I'm joined today in the audience by some of the members of our bargaining team. We're pleased to be here. We are especially thankful for Warren Hellman's participation and guidance and assistance in this effort. It's been a lot of work by a lot of people. We do have a meeting set up with the mayor. We have issues that we'll be discussing, but it's a healthy process and happy to participate.
Can you say what issues?
We'll be discussing them with the mayor.
Can you talk about how this negotiation differed from previous years where you all had some strong objections as well too?
Well, negotiations is always a difficult process. Both sides come in with their interest and ideas, and what was different here is we spent a great deal of time at the beginning and got beat up some in the press because of the time that we did take so that we fully understood the facts going into the discussions in the meet and confer.
There's a particular elected official not among you, Jeff Adachi, who's probably going to go forward with his version of pension reform. And what's your, what do you think?
I did meet with Jeff Adachi yesterday. We explained our proposal to him. I leave that up to his choice, whether he wants to present Son of B or not. But we do believe that our consensus approach here is the right thing to do. It signals that if you do want sacrifices, you got to work directly with people who will offer that sacrifice. And we'll do it in a way in which is comprehensive and reflective of the values of San Francisco. That's what we've done. And so I leave Mr. Adachi to his viewpoint, but I am sure that he has to recognize this is the official city family, and he does not represent that.
Mr. Mayor, do you believe that the involvement of the city attorney, who's campaigning himself as a lobbyist for Mr. Hellman, and giving his recent remarks before the Labor Council, do you think that presents a conflict of interest in his role as legal counsel for this process?
I do not. The city attorney has been giving us very solid advice, and there's been no doubt in my mind that that advice has been completely apart from anything that's political. We have kept politics out of this and focused on the numbers and the legality of the proposals that we presented, and we're extremely confident that this will bear fruit not only at the Board of Supervisors, but before the public in November.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.